Hi, I want to make a video on pain versus pleasure and experiencing pain and pleasure, and how addiction can obviously get in the way of pleasure and pain. And I think to use as an example for the main purpose of this video, the main subject of this video, and that would be the idea of taking amount of pain to get a main amount of gain. Obviously, someone would go through a certain amount of pain in any given circumstance to go through to get to some kind of pleasure, but obviously that's what life's relying on. You go through pain, you go through tension, you have to go through the tension to reach an orgasm, or you go through this to get that. You go through the effort to get the money to get what you want, or what it is to earn your keep, or whatever it may be. You go through the negative to get the positive, but that's the only thing life's made out of. It's made out of two things. There's one thing really, and that's getting relieving tension and avoiding relieving tension, or tension, like whatever it may be, tension, sexual, getting hungry, any kind of tension along those lines, or avoiding pain outright. There's avoiding pain, there's avoiding tension, getting tension, um, um, tension, pain, avoiding those things, going through those things, or whatever it may, going through in a certain amount of time, and all of a sudden you've gone through a certain amount of pain, and all of a sudden it's gone. That's going through tension, more pain, less pain. There's only varying degrees of pain or suffering that we experience, things that you don't want to have or experience anymore. That's the definition of suffering. You don't want it anymore because it's annoying, or it's causing some kind of deprivation to you. Um, Actively avoiding some kind of direct pain, or getting tension and satisfying that tension. Like I mentioned the steps before, there's either the pain or the tension that you're experiencing. Um, Direct pain or tension, something leading to a tension that you're experiencing is a pain. I was trying to think, I said two things. Um, so I'm just thinking, maybe if a person is willing to take 30 seconds of the most worst kind of pain to get the 30 seconds of best kind of pain, obviously it's because your addiction that's driving you. It doesn't mean it's innately a good thing, it just means your addiction is driving you. And just because the good feels good, or the satisfaction feels good, or the relief of tension feels good, doesn't mean it's not still a negative that you're experiencing. That doesn't mean that what you went through wasn't worse than the satisfaction that you gained. It just means your addiction's driving you, and that's the thing that's constantly being attention. Just think about it for a second. You realize the addictions you have and the tension you have is constantly being built up, and it's based on negative. Regardless of what you think, or whatever it may be, it's an addiction driving you, and it's constantly based on deprivation that you need to satisfy. So even if you would take the 30 seconds, or even just 5 seconds of pleasure through 30 seconds of pain, first of all, we don't know if those things measure up to be the same thing, or more or less, or this or that, in terms of the relief that you get based on what's accepted, or what you would think is worth the pain to get the gain. It's just that the addiction's driving you more than anything, a relief for that tension. You need to relieve it. You want to get through that tension, or you're willing to go through something based on a hunger that you have. Obviously, unneeded pain is obviously something that you need less, unless you want to get something in the end. A delusion, addiction, something that you feel is necessary, that you want, regardless of what you want or not, but it's still a negative that you're experiencing. And it's just a relief of that negative, and it's a negativity exists regardless of your perception or your addiction that you have. And the addiction is part of the negative, and you may see during the moment that you're experiencing it, or whatever it may be, that it was worth it, but that doesn't mean it was worth it. It just means that you're addicted, and you're rationalizing. But that's the thing with life. You're constantly rationalizing because you have that ability, and that's all you're really doing, because you don't have any other means of describing an emotion rather than rationalizing, doing this, that, or the other thing. There's rationalizing regardless of its irrationality or rationality. You're rationalizing, and it can be coherent with reality or with the truth. It can be consistent, or it can be inconsistent, but it still exists, regardless of what you see or don't see, or anything, or what you perceive. But yeah, it's still a negative that you're satisfying. It doesn't matter how much you think what you're satisfying is um, anything but a negative. It doesn't matter. It's still a negative, and you're just satisfying, getting tension relief from that negative, reaching a very temporary, very low negative number, and then all of a sudden going right back and having that negative number build up regardless of your perception. It's still a tension, and tensions build up inside. But more than anything, it's the addiction that's driving you to go through kind of a pain. Well, that's the only thing life's made of. It was an addiction to rationalize a relief of tension, or to satisfy a relief of tension. That's the only thing we have, is a relieving of tension. And that's the way the game works, is it wouldn't work any other way unless there was a relief mechanism to get rid of the tension. Obviously, since that's intrinsic and innate, doesn't mean that the tension isn't still negative. And the satisfaction you're getting is a positive. It's not a positive, it's just a relief from a negative. And just because you're willing to go through it doesn't mean it's not a negative. It's still a negative. Regardless of what you perceive or not, even if you don't perceive it, it's there. And I think if you just think for a second, you realize, oh man, if I were thinking about this 24/7, yeah, I think I'd go insane. Because it's very easy to go insane that way. But yes, it's a mechanism that exists on its own regardless. It's rationalization of an addiction that you have that's making you go through these things because it's the only thing you have. Either being in a deprivated state, we're obviously constantly moving, and all these moving parts are allowing a constant shift, at least slight one, and the emotions that we're experiencing, or whatever relief or satisfaction or addictions we're having based on our individual experience that exists in reality regardless. But it's something that exists regardless of perception or anything like that. So it's something that exists, and there's no openness to argument when it comes to that. There's no there's different perception, but that's about it. It doesn't change reality. It's something that exists regardless. So I think that's really the only thing I have to say on the subject. There's not much else to say except that our addictions are driving us to go through it based on a deprivation, based on the only thing that can really happen in life is based on a deprivation or avoidance of pain or getting out of some kind of suffering state into a better state. That's the only thing that can exist. That's the only thing we have, and that's the thing that we're constantly striving for. But that striving is part of a negative deprivation game that we're trying to constantly fight and we're getting out of. Not we are, but that's what we're trying to get out of, but we're constantly being put right back into the middle of the same situation over and over again, and that's where the addiction is driving us based on a deprivation. The deprivation is an addiction based on a desire mechanism to either desire to avoid pain, get rid of pain, or to relieve a tension. With attention, regardless, is still avoiding a pain or a negative deprivation. It's all about semantics in many circumstances. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. If I have anything else to say, I mean, I always feel like I inadequately describe these things, and I can't say words right sometimes in front of a camera for some reason. But it's fine. I just want to make sure I get the subject, generally speaking, down. I can always elaborate a little more on the subject later on if I need to. So if that's all I need to mention, I think that's enough of the video. So thank you, and until next time, bye. And thank you for watching. And leave comments if you want to. It's always nice hearing people's opinions and people's psychological or philosophical interpretations or I